Welcome to the Curiosity Crisis. We challenge ourselves to explore the world of business, tech, investing, and science. Get curious and be part of our journey as we discuss, challenge, and learn.
Today, we're chatting to Hirsch Shah. We're going to learn the story of a young 21-year-old starting a business straight out of university, growing and scaling it over a 10-year journey to most recently being acquired by the business he aspired to when he started it all. Hirsch was the founder and director of Aligned Agency, a digital agency based out of Perth, WA, servicing clients around Australia and the globe. They work right across the digital marketing value chain, building websites and online presence, doing Google and Facebook ads and search engine optimization, right through to rebrands and business strategy and growth consulting. Over the last 10 years since the journey began, Hirsch has worked directly with hundreds of businesses across sales, digital marketing, strategy, customer experience, and retention. Before building out his 13-strong team, Hirsch managed every digital marketing campaign and website project himself and developed thousands of hours of digital marketing and high-level business experience. He's never had a proper career job, with his last official employed role being a JB Hifi part-timer while at uni, and built something special from the ground up. I'm incredibly keen to unpack this time with him and get some gems of wisdom that come from building something of your own. So without further ado, Hirsch, how are you?
Mate, I'm beaming and very stoked to be here. Definitely a long-time listener of the Curiosity Crisis and first-time guest, so let's do it.
So keen to get into it. So you would know, if you're a listener, that our first and favourite question is, what is keeping you curious at the moment?
So, mate, it's going to sound a bit left of field and a bit woo-woo, but I've been reading up a lot about quantum physics and quantum mechanics, but more the practical sort of side of things as to how a lot of the things that we think about and a lot of the ways that we feel and a lot of the things that we visualize, the quantum mechanics of how that actually comes to life in your 3D reality and how real that stuff actually is and the principles behind it. So, yeah, it's been fascinating to read so far.
That's huge. What's the book?
It's called Reality Transurfing by a guy called Vadim Zeland.
Yeah.
He's a Russian quantum physicist, and it was written sometime in the 80s, but still very relevant for today. And I'm about halfway through the book. It's blowing my mind.
That's unreal. And I love that it's such a timeless classic, written in the 80s, and you're still getting so much value out of it now.
100%.
Oh, mate, we need to get you on another time just to debrief that book.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now it's definitely turning my brain into a bit of a spaghetti. So when I finish it, we'll have to do a round two, mate.
I'm so keen. Well, in terms of round one, let's get straight into it. So you were 21. How did you come to the conclusion of starting a business straight out of uni? Well, while you were there, and why did you start?
Yeah, so basically, I just got back from Europe, like a 7-week Euro trip, the classic Euro trips that you basically do when you're at university in the middle of the European summer. Yep. And during that Euro trip, I had a bit of an epiphany while I was there because I was studying engineering at university at the time. And I had this epiphany that, the kind of intuition that you have to trust that I needed to be in sales and marketing and building businesses and that kind of thing. And engineering wasn't going to be truly my life pathway. So I came back, studied marketing for a year. Next year, we went back to Europe for a while with the same boys. And when I got back, I was like, right, I've got 6 months until I enter the final year of my university studies. So I kind of have to start thinking about getting my life sorted after uni and think about what I have to do. So I was like, right, I'm studying marketing. Let's get into the marketing industry. And the best way I knew how to at that time was to try and get an internship. So I started applying for internship left, right, and center, using all the hustle and skills that I've picked up along the way. Got rejected by about 50 different places. And it was around the time where Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek, came into my life. And I started reading about sales and marketing and outsourcing systems and leveraging overseas based contractors, long before it was a really popular thing to do in terms of outsourcing overseas. And after rejection after rejection, I was like, well, maybe I can just get some experience by myself and I can outsource all the things that I don't know for, $5-10 an hour overseas. And I can just start getting clients over here and start kind of building up my own portfolio of work to basically have something to sort of show for. And the plan was to then try and use that to sort of get an internship.
Yeah.
But then basically the longer that went, I started to realize that I absolutely love that sort of stuff. And then the idea of I guess that young quote unquote getting a proper job didn't really appeal to me.
Yeah.
So I just started going harder and harder and harder and acquired, a few more clients. And then by the time that university was actually over, so in that first year, it was absolutely crazy. I managed to be earning just enough income that I didn't really have to get my first job.
Yeah. Yeah.
which is really cool. So it was a bit of an organic sort of a start story, but I very quickly realized I had a passion for the business side of things.
Yeah.
And getting sort of started that way.
Yeah, huge. And you sort of like freelanced and fell into it, but you had to get yourself experience. So you did that, and then you realized, well, I'm just going to keep doing it myself.
Yeah, 100%.
So it wasn't that you were just completely against the idea of working for a corporate and stuff like that. It was that you just needed experience, and then it came to you.
I think soon after I got started, I probably had that like, young person immaturity and a bit of ego about like, I really don't want to have a proper job, and I want to like just work for myself and like be the man and be my own boss and all these different kinds of things. But very, very, very kind of quickly realized that like either or pathway is actually really, really, really good as long as it's aligned with what you want to do, who you are, and what your goals are basically at the time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that I was like back then I was probably like unconsciously opposed to it, but now and even during the process of building a business, I realized that like honestly, either or pathway is completely fine. But I'm very, very, very glad that I chose a pathway that I basically went down, because that was 100% meant for me.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely huge. And I think, look, if you're listening, you probably see Hirsch's last name, and it's the same as mine. We're brothers. So I know you've grown up and you've always been somewhat entrepreneurial, selling cans and hats and all that sort of stuff at school. And it was part of your childhood. So did you think about that, like, when you're in your teens or whatever, that this was something like building something for yourself was always the dream, or it sort of came back to you and you made realizations later that you were born to do this?
Yeah. So looking back on my entire journey, it was always meant to happen. Like it was 100% meant to happen. To obviously build something of my own like that young, because, ever since I was like 7 years old, I was like, buying and selling things at school. And then like when we moved to Australia, when we were 10 years old, like I very quickly, like, started going to IGA and buying Coke cans for 40 cents and selling them at school for $1. I was just doing everything I could when I was young to, make $1 at high school. Me and Mahir, who you know as well, we'd buy and sell laser pointers off of eBay. Yeah. We used to get free stickers, package them up and sell them on eBay. We were just doing all sorts of little schemes and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
so,
I remember the skate decks as well.
Yeah, and the skate decks too. So it was just very much like, buying and selling stuff and making a bit of a margin. And back then you think it's all just like kind of fun and games.
Yeah.
But that's obviously being driven from this like deeper innate personality trait, or deeper innate like true wisdom that you've kind of got about yourself, but it's not really conscious, and you don't really kind of act through that, because obviously the societal norm is to go to school, go to uni, have a wicked time, get a good job, obviously grow that way. So you think that like all this stuff that you're doing on the side is kind of like, for fun, and then when you grow up, you're going to do like the real thing.
Yeah.
But then I was sort of glad that like, kind of 50-50 sort of fell into it. I was consciously aware, but I sort of fell into it. But I think that when the possibility of me becoming a business owner that young came into my mind and I started taking actions towards it, I think that my natural personality and how I was born pushed me into it with a lot more self-belief and a lot more, internal knowing, which made it happen a lot faster.
The internal knowing that it seems to me like it was the inherent calling, which you just weren't conscious of early when you were younger, but when you reflected on it, I can absolutely see that. So talking about then this business, the Aligned Agency, which back then was Trade Design when you started off, how did you go about identifying and validating your first proper business idea or concept? Like you'd run little businesses before, but then how did you make this one? How did you know it was the thing?
So I was very big on the idea early, because I'd actually had a couple of mentors like really, really, really early. Like there was when I was working at JB Hifi, anyone that like made a business purchase, I would like ask them a few business questions and that kind of thing. So I was just trying to learn off of everyone that I possibly could. And as I mentioned, like how I read the 4-hour work week, like, quite early on kind of in my journey as well. My whole thing was, if someone's willing to pay you money for it and, you can get someone to pay you money for it like several times over, then obviously the idea of what you're trying to do is 100% validated, because like a business is validated when people are willing to trade their money for your skills, your time, your product, your service, or whatever it basically is. And the business becomes viable when you can do it to a high quality and make them happy time and time again.
Yep.
So step one was kind of already done, because basically like my initial strategy was when I started Trade Design, it was a very simplistic idea, but I was like, digital marketing, technology, that kind of thing is not something that comes naturally to tradies.
Yeah.
And the tradie economy in WA was absolutely massive, and there was no dedicated businesses or brands at the time doing digital marketing and website design and that sort of stuff for tradies.
Yeah.
So the number one way that tradies used to get work back then was off of Gumtree. So I was just like, I knew little bits about digital marketing on Google and Facebook and that kind of thing. So I was like, if I can get tradies off of Gumtree, which basically what they're doing is they're putting ads on someone else's platform, and help them build their own assets on Google when, because Google was like becoming more and more and more popular very, very, very quickly for trades-based marketing.
Yeah.
Then I could get them way better results and help them build like an asset sort of long term.
Yeah.
So I'd cold call tradies off of Gumtree and then tell them that I could get them like more work and a better quality of customer from Google using the stuff that like I was basically doing like sort of back then. And I made the first sort of 5-6 sales, like, pretty fast actually. And that's what kind of validated it. And I was like, right, there's like some real like thing behind this.
Yeah.
So like, let's just continue.
Yeah.
And as I said, after that first year, I started at the beginning of 2015. I was still at uni full time. I was still working at JB Hifi. And by the end of that year, I had like, a decent book of customers. And I was like, I'm kind of like running an agency now.
Yeah. That's so interesting as well. Like it's massive that there probably was a ton of digital marketing businesses or agencies out there, but you just picked a niche and went hard on it, and you got the feedback from the market pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit of first movers advantage as well, but also it was really funny because like I literally didn't even know what an agency actually was when I was running an agency, and I only realized that like, this category of business kind of exists. So it was like, it was very much just start taking action and make a lot of sense of the action that you're taking and the positive momentum that you're getting like after the fact. Don't try and fucking plan everything. Yeah. And then take the action afterwards.
Yeah, gotcha. That's so interesting. I was reading Shoe Dog by Phil Knight about Nike starting, and it was all about, he just targeted the athletes, the athletics, and it was back then running wasn't cool, but he just did that and he built a niche out of there. And then from that core, after that, he could expand, and then it just coincided with the popularity and growth of running, and then just more broadly shoes and lifestyle and stuff like that. So it's really interesting to see the niche and then how it grows out. So in terms of then the journey after that, you had some early success and you got the business concept validated and it was proved to you that you were on something. But what were then the biggest challenges and mistakes you made and the obstacles you faced to grow it from obviously what it was then to a 10-year business that you ended up selling? Yeah,
so in the early days, it was definitely, there was a bit of a natural lack of trust because I was quite young. This is back in so it's funny that 2015, 2016, like around the time when I was getting started is like, it's actually less than 10 years ago, but like the world has just changed so much in 10 years.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, so back then it was like all in-person meetings rather than like, doing Zoom calls or Google Meet and that sort of stuff. Yeah. So even though the internet was around for quite a while, it was like whenever I would rock up to a bit of a meeting, people were like quite stumped with the fact that I looked like really, really, really young. And some of the companies that I was actually talking to was like the decent sized companies. Yeah. So they were just like a bit of like, who's this bloody young whippersnapper that thinks he's fucking hot shit and like can do this. So there's a bit of a lack of trust of kind of being young, so you don't kind of get taken seriously, or when you do get taken seriously, it's just like, this guy's giving it a go. He's not like a seasoned sort of an expert. And even though I was positioning myself in that way and the results that we're getting is really good, when they bought from me the second, third or fourth time, it was like always like with that, like, this guy knows exactly what he's doing. But initially it was one of those things where, it was very hard to get the foot in the door kind of like initially. Yeah. So you'd have to either discount your prices or like, just do something like that to basically get someone sort of like over the line. But then you'd very quickly turn them into a customer of life. Yeah. A customer for life. The second one was basically when you're that young, you look to everyone around you that's in a similar kind of a business and you think that they've got it all figured out. Yeah. So you're looking at all your competitors' websites. I think the first year you don't even consider the competitors because you're so focused on just like smashing it. And that's 100% like the best way to go, even when you're like established in business, is just like literally live your mission and give your value and just get better and better and better and better and better. Because there's no way of like, you can't skip from year 1 to year 10, you just have to go through the process and just gotta focus on it. So there's no point comparing yourself to others. But when you're that young, you compare yourself to all these other companies, all these other competitors that are doing all these different kinds of things. And many, many, many times you just have to get overwhelmed by that. Yeah. And then just realize like, there's nothing I can do aside from taking care of the next customer in the best way possible. Yeah. Yeah. And charging the most amount of money that I possibly can, and looking after them and getting them the results and hiring the next staff member that I can basically afford and this and that and the other. So you just have to really, really, really take it like one step at a time. Yeah. The other big thing I think was when you are that young, I mean, we're going to talk about this a bit further in the podcast, but now that the business has been sold and I'm obviously, working for the acquiring company for a chapter is awesome because you can see the difference between working for a business and running a business. Like running a business is the invisible weight on your shoulders is insane. 10 hours owning a business and 10 hours working in a business that you don't own, the amount of pressure and weight on your shoulders and stuff is completely different. So when you're that young and everyone else is like out having fun, out doing their 6 months, 12 months, 24 months travels and like, working on ski resorts and doing this and that and the other and like really having like a ton of fun. It's very, very, very easy to get like disillusioned and kind of get like sort of get distracted. So I'm very focused that I just kind of kept so I'm very grateful that I kept focus on like keeping my nose to the ground and just like realizing the grass isn't greener. And I'm doing exactly what I'm meant to be doing and that sort of stuff and not getting distracted by that kind of thing. Cause it's just like, that's a huge challenge because that's the age when everyone's having the most fun. Bit of cash in your pocket, you've just finished uni and that sort of stuff and you've like taken on the challenge to like build a business. Very different reality.
That's crazy.
So psychologically it's tough to see all that kind of going on around you and then like keep coming back to like why you're actually doing it.
Those are super profound and I've definitely heard it through chatting to a lot of founders here. The stuff you said about being young and taken seriously and needing to prove yourself and get your foot in the door. Like we talked to Liz Knight, who started a business at 19, very similar setup. And then we talked to Blake, who said the exact same thing about, just not putting numbers on the board, but just working, proving to yourself, getting to the next thing. So
I do want to say though, now, like Gen Z or like people that are like, between like 18 to 25, a lot of people take that generation super seriously now. Because like there's so many people in that generation that have either gone viral, made amazing content, built businesses super young. Like you look at guys like Mr. Beast and this and that, like it's a very well-known fact that there could be people under 25 that can be like 100 millionaires or billionaires now. And that generation's become like synonymous with like things like technology and, all of that sort of stuff, even with like an ignorant understanding of the older generation. So now if you're young, people actually do take you seriously. So you shouldn't actually see that as a disadvantage because it's a massive advantage and it's a mainstream massive advantage.
And I completely can resonate to that. Like not starting a business. I mean, we do this podcast, but I've worked in some big organizations and I've worked with a lot of young people in big organizations. And, when it takes a bit to get your foot in the door and get trusted and stuff like that. But I know that, once you do and once you prove yourself and others as well that I've seen that have absolutely knocked the house down or slammed the door down to new opportunities and then just delivered. And then you pretty much work to a point that you just can't be ignored anymore. And then that's a point that, the young people are getting taken really seriously. And I also think that nowadays it's kind of cool to come in with a completely new set of eyes. And that's always said, that's kind of cliche, but like, it's like the PayPal story. Like the best thing that they had when they started PayPal was no experience in finance, but just like a new way of thinking and going at it and trying to prove it and test things and do it differently. So no, that's awesome, man. I think you've really framed that up super well.
Just a quick intermission. Thanks so much for listening. If we could just ask a quick favor, if you could send this to a friend and recommend it, we would greatly appreciate it. It's easy to do and it helps the show out. Thanks.
In terms then of the business's growth from one level to the next, what were the key levels or stages of the development of Trade Design and then Aligned and then it got acquired? Where did you see the key moments and milestones? Like, was it hiring more people, building systems and processes, getting different tech in or outsourcing work? Like, what were the key big points?
Okay, so now, like looking back, I've like been able to very clearly sort of define them. But also if you're like in your like early 20s or late teens or whatever, don't think that you have to stick to this entire script because the biggest thing that I've learned is everything that is meant to happen and every person you're meant to come across and every stage of growth that's meant to happen will happen like at the right time, as long as you've got the best intentions, you're doing exactly what you need to be doing and you're sort of moving forward. So you have to honor those phases of life because there's like, even though like looking back on it, I should have scaled as fast as I possibly could have at the very beginning when I had that niche, because now the niche of like digital marketing for trades 10 years later is quite saturated, but it was 5 years until there was even a single competitor in the space.
Yeah, right.
But when I was in that phase of life, I couldn't think of anything worse than like spending all of my time like having like, 50, 60, 70 staff members and this and that and the other. Because even though, yes, it was really hard to like build a business and that kind of thing, I still wanted to be like young, free, live with my friends, go out on the weekends. I didn't want the weight of like paying people's mortgages and paying people's salaries and this like on my shoulders. So definitely there's an element in terms of if you're looking at it objectively without taking your unique life circumstances into consideration.
Right.
There's key stages, which I can see now.
Yeah.
But if you're young and you're building a business, don't skip on the 2 or 3 years of just like building a great business and being a freelancer and learning. Don't think that you need to live all those stages, but skip just being young and having fun, because that is super important. And everyone that didn't do that very much resents their journey at the end as well, regardless of how much money you got in the bank.
Yeah.
So I'll preface with that. But in terms of the key stages, so at the very beginning, it was literally just about, I think the first like year or two, or like, the first 10, 15, 20 customers is just hustle. Do as much work as you possibly can, and you'll figure out what you're good at, what you're not good at, what makes sense, what you resonate with, how to build your products and services in the most efficient way, what gets the best results, and that sort of stuff as well. But then you really want to keep a close eye on what the most profitable things are for you and what generates the best results for your clients if you're in the services-based business. And then once you sort of figure that out, it's very much what I did was I outsourced more and more parts of it. So that I wasn't doing the actual delivery of the work and the fulfillment, and I was just sort of like managing the clients, managing the expectations, like managing the relationships and bringing more clients on board. And then everyone thinks that you need to have some person's, like, your first official in-house hire's salary in profits before you hire them.
Yeah.
It's like when you've got 50 or 60% of their income coming in as like profit on top of the small amount that you're kind of paying yourself, because you want to reinvest as much as you can kind of back into the business.
Yeah.
Bring that person on board, because it will like asymmetrically increase your productivity and your returns and like the trajectory of your business. So you don't wait until you've got like 100% of their salary like coming in profits. Like when you've got like 50, 60% and you're on a good trajectory, bring that next person in.
Yeah, we just talked to Harry Lingard of Field, and he's said that absolutely about his hiring and scaling of that business, which is very different to this one. But it's so many parallels that I'm hearing along these journeys. But sorry, so you're on in terms of hiring and bringing somebody on.
Yeah. So you want to hire, like you want to then, start hiring and bringing someone on based on, I mean, back then I did what's called like, I guess, hiring down, but now I'd be hiring across or hiring up.
Yeah. What does hiring down mean?
So hiring down is essentially like, you kind of like maintain like almost at the highest level sort of position kind of like in the business, and you're basically like bringing people in to do parts of the job that you were previously doing. So you're still teaching people how to do it. Whereas if I was to do it again, what I would basically do is the first couple of hires, like, I had like some amazing stuff in the Philippines that we basically still had like we still have up until this day. But my first in-house hire at the business would probably be someone that was greater than what my level of abilities were in the industry based on kind of like where I was sort of going. So maybe bringing in like an operations manager or bringing in like a head of digital marketing like straight away, rather than bringing in someone who will take 30 or 40% of your workload away, bring someone that knows way more than you. And obviously when you're that young, it's like so hard to even conceptualize that.
Yeah.
Like when you're 23, the idea of like hiring someone who's like 31, been there, done that, has a ton of experience and that kind of, it almost doesn't even compute. But you realize just like how important that is. And if I was to do that, we'd have grown like a lot faster. However, if you're going to go down the pathway of sort of like hiring down kind of thing, it's like, just hire the highest leverage people that'll free up the most of your time. Yep. And then keep building the structure out from there. But I think one thing that I haven't mentioned yet, the other thing is you want to try and hire a coach and an expert in that field almost before you hire anyone else. Right. Because if you hire someone who's been there and done that, and you get coached or you get mentorship or you get some guidance, or you basically just like talk to someone who's been there and done that before, they will literally give you the blueprint as to how to make it like as successful as possible in like the shortest period of time, and give the most value to your customers and give the most value to your staff as well. So basically once I did that, slowly started like freeing up more and more of my time, bringing on more customers. The structure kept kind of building out, and then understanding where the inflection points basically kind of are in a service-based business as well. Yeah. And this is something that my coaches like really helped me kind of like really focus on and sort of realize as well. There's a few kind of key milestones, like around $25,000 a month is when you'd probably like bring on board your first like Aussie sort of staff member. If you're building a business kind of like in Australia, then like, 50 to 75,000 is when you're really starting to bring in like some more operational staff members and more expert sort of staff members and that kind of thing. And then once you cross the $1 million mark, then you're really bringing in like high level operators that can help build the structure to help you kind of like sort of scale further. Yeah.
So I'm hearing so much about like, hiring people, building out your team. And it's like, it takes me back to, I think you and I read the Richard Branson book way back. And it's all about like, you never want to be the smartest person in the room. You want to hire hire, like you can have the vision and the idea, but you want people around you that are better than you in the specific tasks of making it a reality, sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to get to this, but so the founder of the business that acquired us, he was actually one of my early mentors, which, just speaks to the power of like building relationships and holding and maintaining those relationships like early on, sort of during the journey.
Yeah.
His name's Bodhi. He did that exceptionally well. So his whole thing from the very beginning was just like, I'm going to set the vision and the direction, but I'm going to like literally hire people that make me look like an idiot.
Yeah.
And they grew super quickly and became like a stalwart, extremely successful company, doing sort of like in the same space of sort of doing what we're basically doing. And it was really just sort of came down to like, he was basically just like held the space and created the vision and the direction.
Yeah.
But he just hired people that were better than him.
That's awesome. Well, you sort of read my mind. The next question is, when you're thinking about the business, we've heard some of the key milestones as to, you're hiring your first team members, you're going from one level to another, you've proved yourself initially. Then when did you start, did you ever start thinking about, what was the sort of succession plan, or when you really developed it into like a long-term, like sustainable business, did you have a target? For example, were you always building to sell? Did you have a clear picture of what value looks like against objective assessment? So like, if I do this, my business will be valued at this much, so I can exit. Or were you just building and scaling to infinity and keeping on going, and then this sales just sort of fell into place? Like, what's the story there?
Yep. So this is really like, it's something that like I think for everyone's first business, it's this like catch-22 situation of like, if you try and plan everything out from the very beginning, a lot of the time it won't go to plan and you won't take action because first of all, you haven't got the knowledge, skills, mindsets, heart sets, all these different kinds of things when you're like a first time super young kind of entrepreneur. But when you start a business, it doesn't matter how much you love being the founder, the director, the owner, the runner of that business, whether it's like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, there will come a point where you might feel done with that chapter of your life of operating that business that you've basically founded. And maybe you want to basically take it to like the absolute next level by being acquired by another company or merging with another company and then being a part of a much bigger vision. But you don't know when that's going to come. But the thing is, if you don't consistently build your business to be sellable or quote unquote scalable, then when that internal shift comes within you and you're like, okay, like, I'm ready for this phase, then the process of getting that business to the point where it's actually valuable to someone else and it's actually like a really good strategic fit for someone else because you want to move on to the next phase of your life can get dragged out a long period of time and can, you know what it's like doing things that don't really align with you for a super long period of time and turning the ship into making it like a sellable or scalable sort of a business that's like objectively valuable to other people can be very, 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 very difficult. And if you're almost like done with that chapter, when you have to do that, it's so hard to like kind of turn that corner. So I read a few good books during the journey. One of them was called Built to Sell by a guy called John Warrillow. So it's definitely important to be thinking, even if you don't think you're ever going to sell that business one day. And there was so many times during the journey where I was just like so in love with the process, so in love with the hustle, so in love with what we're doing and that kind of thing that I was just like, I'm never going to sell this. Or I never want to merge with anyone else or whatever. And, for me, there was definitely a period where it was about a 2-year process of getting the business. Like when I kind of had that realization that even if I'm absolutely loving it and frothing it, I have to turn it into something that's like scalable and sort of sellable. That happened about sort of 2 years ago. And we really changed a lot of things in the business to make it like a ton better, not just for the value for the buyer, but also for all the customers and all the staff and that kind of thing as well. And really sort of built that out. So I think that when you first start, just being aware that you ultimately have to build it so that it's somewhat exitable, whether you want to sell it or whether you just want to take extended time off and then kind of come back to it is super important. Because every single chapter in life does come to an end. Like school comes to an end, university comes to an end, your career comes to an end, hopefully people's marriages don't come to an end, but like, your kids leave, there's all these different factors in life and wanting to step out of one business and into another version of it or a way or something like that is a chapter and it will come. And if you're not ready for that in the 3D reality, when your internal world kind of changes, it can be super painful.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And like, it's like, it would make sense. And like any founders or budding founders listening to this would resonate, because it is your baby at the end of the day. You know, for example, if you're an employee, that chapter can come to an end. You can say, here's my 4 weeks and I'm off, you know,
exactly.
onto the next chapter. But it's different. And it's interesting that, you know, everyone's got a different journey of starting a business. But I think if you fall into a framework of, for example, like an accelerator program, you're sort of told that, you know, these are the things you need to hit these sort of valuations to you know, be able to scale your business. It's sort of training you in that mindset anyway. Or if you're a bigger business looking towards listing on, you know, the stock exchange, whatever, you're building it to be valued. So you're doing that stuff inherently. But if you're building a business purely, you know, like you did from 21 years old, and you're growing it and you're thinking it's your baby, you might not have been thinking in that way straight away. So it's interesting to see that you still come to that same conclusion that, you know, I've read about in a lot of other things. But yeah.
The thing that I will say is, like, I know there's a lot of these different kinds of businesses that, like, you know, the business is almost kind of being built to reach a certain valuation, or like being rolled up. Like, I don't think that's a good way to build a business, because at the end of the day, then it just all comes down to like what the business results are, and the customer and the staff and the team and that sort of stuff are all secondary. My whole thing is basically just building a business to sell is just a good way to build a business, because it makes it like objectively valuable in the 3D world, which like, whether it's a heart-led business or a head-led business or like a soul-led business, it sort of should be like that.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite books is Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. So the way that I view it now is, you want to build everything to run from infinity. You want to build everything to run for infinity, but while you're building it to run for infinity, just keep putting structures and systems and processes and that kind of thing in place, and key people in place, such that if you're not going to be the main steward of that ship and you want to go in a different direction, or you want to merge with another company and that kind of thing, that it naturally happens.
And I think even talking to Blake in one of our other episodes, he talks a lot about systems and processes and just building them, because it's a more efficient way to run the business, and it's another way that they can sort of jump in and jump out, or people can like appreciate how something's happening. But if it's all in your head, then it's a little bit harder. I think we're getting close to time, but I've got a couple of questions that I'm burning to ask you about, you know, yourself now. So you've grown Align Agency, you've sold it to Dialect Digital. Now, do you see yourself as a founder or a builder? And is there a style you try to take on?
So I love the idea of, I don't like the idea of being a founder or a builder. Like the idea that resonates with me the most, that I think resonates, like definitely resonates with my soul the most, is being an establisher. And an establisher is a hybrid between being a founder and being a builder. Because an establisher is like, you know, being a founder is like starting an idea, getting some momentum behind it, getting it off the ground, but it can fizzle out pretty quickly, because like there's a lot of fun in starting things. Being a builder is like being unable to start something, but like when something's up and kind of going, you can like obviously build it and kind of take it from there. But being an establisher is a blend of both, where you can start something, you can build it to a point where it's got its own identity, its own values, its own ideas, its own direction, its own like kind of team behind it, and it's giving value, and it's valuable beyond just yourself. So I think being an establisher is where I want to be at. And the best part about being an establisher is like, you can be in a business that is being established, or one that is already established. So it's a hybrid kind of between both.
And is that what you sort of will be doing with Dialect as well, like establishing this new acquired merged business sort of thing?
100%. Yeah. So the whole idea behind that is like, Dialect have got a very, 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 well, a much bigger business with a lot more scale. So there's more opportunities to establish things within the business as well. So there's opportunities for intrapreneurship, which is really cool. Or, you know, establishing new divisions, or, you know, doing more acquisitions and that kind of thing as well. And bringing on key account. There's just, I think being an establisher allows you to be fluid with your identity, which opens you up to a lot more stuff, so you don't get locked into a certain type of person that you're meant to be.
No, I love that. That's pretty unique as well. Look, we've probably heard a lot of the lessons that you've taken from the journey to now. Is there anything that you haven't said as part of your story that is just burning that you'd want to share with any new founders or our listeners?
100%. So I know we're getting to time, so I'll keep this quick. Basically, the first one, and I've said it before, but I'll say it again, because it's the most important thing, is do not pay the idiot tax. And what the idiot tax is there's someone who's been there and done that, way more successful than you are. Just pay people for coaching, advice, and guidance. It will literally cut down your failures into like less than half, and it will fast track your success. You'll still have a lot of failures along the way, but this will just fast track your success, and it'll be a lot less painful. So get coaching, get mentorship, and don't think you have to do everything by yourself. That's number one. Number two is always value yourself at 2 times more than what you think you're worth at that time. Because
Right.
the most important thing is you do care a lot. So when I was first getting started, I thought that like, oh, I'm young, I don't have that much experience, or like, you know, even like after I'd had like 2 or 3 years of experience and had like objective measures of my success compared to like what other agencies were getting for their clients, I would still be like, well, I'm small, so I shouldn't charge that much. But then obviously you haven't got the capital to then invest in like, you know, awesome staff members, office premises, technology improvement, that kind of thing as well. So you always tend to undervalue your own skill set and the value that you bring. So just make it a conscious choice to always value yourself at 2 times more than what you think you're worth. And then you'll always be ahead, or you always have enough to invest further back into yourself. So double your pricing always.
Yeah, huge.
And the third one is, especially in Australia, I've found that a lot of people are just like, oh, mate, like I don't want to build a big business, mate. It just sounds like headaches and this and that. That is so far from the truth. The bigger it gets and the more successful it becomes, the easier it becomes to run, because you can carry the weight across multiple different shoulders. And it's honestly one of the most toxic beliefs that like most business owners have, especially that I see in Australia, is like, if it's small and young and lean, then like it's, mate, no headaches. Like it's really nice and simple. Incorrect, because you're always going to be locked into that business. Everything's going to fall onto your shoulders, and every single little problem is going to like, you know, massively kind of stress you out. The bigger it gets, the less it relies on you, and the easier your life becomes. So build it big if you want balance. Everyone thinks if you keep it small, you'll be balanced. Incorrect. It's the exact opposite.
That's so interesting, and I don't think I've ever heard that. So that's a new one in terms of, you know, talking to founders and growing and scaling. Is there any advice, not reflecting on the key, like hard and fast business rules that you picked up, but just more on your journey from, you know, a 21-year-old you at uni until now, like a 31-year-old that sold his first big business and is moving on to the next thing? What piece of advice would you have for that young uni grad Hirsch?
Yeah, so I mean, just want to start by saying, I mean, my business wasn't really a big business, but it was a great business. I really enjoyed it. You know, I was probably still too central to it as well, but you know, it's also some of the lessons that you kind of like learn along the way and that kind of thing as well. So some of the advice that I'm basically giving is like some of the advice that like I'd be giving myself for the next thing, or you know, for anyone else. But essentially, if I was to have some advice, it's start as early as possible. When you have got, you know, no kids, no dependents, no mortgage, no nothing like that kind of tying you down, your runway and your ability to like fail and experiment and just like sort of move forward, like is so important. Like starting when you're older gets exponentially harder because you've just got more very real responsibility. So start as early as you can, give yourself a long runway. And I mean, it's a bit of a controversial take, but this whole obsession and idea with like buying a house and like, you know, being really smart with your money and getting into the property market and blah, 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 like invest what you were going to invest in your first or second property or whatever into yourself, into your personal development, into your own growth and into your business. Like don't get tied down by that stuff like early. Invest it all back into yourself and hedge your bets on yourself because when you look at that over a 10-year period, as in like, it doesn't matter how many houses I would have bought when I was like obviously younger.
Probably not many.
Yeah, very obviously not very many, but like, you know, it doesn't matter even, you know, 2, 3, 4 investment properties or whatever, like even like when you talk about the quote unquote financial returns, the returns are so much more outsized when you invest in yourself and you sell a business. But that is just a reflection of like how much development, how much work you do on yourself. So 100% just keep investing back into yourself and also just realize that like this whole idea of like retirement and this and that and the other is like the second you're doing exactly what you're meant to be doing and the second you are on your right pathway, like you're already retired. So don't stress about all that sort of stuff. Start early, you know, don't overthink it and invest into yourself. Just don't do what everyone else tells you to do. Back
your own journey. I love hearing that. And I think we've talked about it a lot.
And also do not judge anyone else's life pathway as well.
True.
Because as I said, there's nothing wrong with getting a job.
But well, speaking of your journey and the rest of them, one of our favorite questions here is, you know, you've done what we've talked about in this journey. You've started a business, you've grown it, you've scaled it, you learned a hell of a lot along the way. You've found new niches, you've come up against obstacles, and you know you've developed yourself as a human as well as a business owner over the last 10 years. But Hirsch, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Mate, I think the idea of being an establisher really, really, really speaks out to me because that just means that you can do anything. So I definitely want to be, I want to be involved in business for the rest of my life, whether it's entrepreneurship. I want to be a content creator. I want to be an author. I want to create, build and grow. So I think the idea of being an establisher and never being finished. So I don't have a clearly defined answer to that question, but I just never want to be finished.
Yeah, I love it. And if now listeners want to find out a bit more, if we've sparked some curiosity about you and your journey and your story, how can they find you? LinkedIn, Instagram?
I would probably say the best is, at Hirsch Shah on Instagram.
Yep.
I am planning on doing a lot more content sort of stuff for sure, because the business has only just been acquired, so I've been very busy with that entire process. So there's going to be a lot more dropping there. Also, check out at dilate.digital. They're obviously the company that basically acquired Aligned Agency.
Yep.
They're phenomenal.
Yep.
Whether you're an aspiring marketer, an aspiring entrepreneur, whether you want to learn more about digital marketing and that sort of stuff, which is obviously the way that I've kind of built my life up as well.
Yep.
That's a really cool resource. Also check out Field at field.co for the company that obviously Harry's building, that we've been like an investor in. And if you go to my Instagram, the links to all that is all there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that's all we have time for. So before I go, I just want to say a massive thank you for coming on. This has been probably a long time coming, but it feels bloody good to have been able to interview you. So thanks for coming on.
Mate, really appreciate that.
Thanks for listening. Find us at thecuriositycrisis.com and Curiosity Crisis on Instagram. We're on all major streaming services, so you can listen how you like. We'd like to just ask a quick favor. If you could share this with a friend, your recommendation means a lot. Thanks, and we'll catch you in the next episode.